Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of ClueCon Weekly. Joining us this week for the second time is Shawn Augustine, a consultant in AI and all things LLM, and has been a friend of the open source community of the IT community for a long time now. And thank you, Shawn, for joining us today again.
Yo, I'm thrilled to be back. I do enjoy these discussions, and it helps work out a number of talking points that I have when I do gigs around the country. So I appreciate the platform. Thank you.
Last time that you were with us, ClueCon Weekly, we went around what LLMs, GPT and LLMs in general can do, some of the features, some of the ideas, the things that could be built. But recently, there are a couple known, let's say, non-technical topics. They're still technical because everything is technical in our work, but that have come up around LLMs, mostly around ethics. And I know you've been doing some talks, you've been doing some work, so I'm very curious to hear your opinion on that.
Wow. And that's a very wide and deep topic, and something I do talk about. And I I really, really hold to heart currently because we're at a single point in time where we can sway technology. When I say we, I
Mm.
mean the whole of humanity. We could say the whole of Western or Eastern civilization, but really all of us. And there, to me, was a very clear demark when we talk about ethics, and it's who makes decisions. We can just start there. And that's one of the things I would consult to any business is when you develop a ethical framework for AI, make sure it's very inclusive for all stratas of your organization. Governments should have inclusivity for all stratas of society, right? But ethics as a whole is the forefront of AI technology because none of that moves forward unless we all have buy-in, right? We're not Joe or Sally or whomever on the street isn't going to buy into these two technologies or using them day to day unless there is a level of comfort with the technology itself and the data therein, and a level of comfort with who is purveying and producing those technologies, right? So there is a lot there, just at the highest of levels. So, is there anything that really pops into your head when someone says AI and ethics in the same sentence? Is there a concern that just boom, it's right there in the front of your
So
mind?
the first concern I have, which might be wrong or right, I don't even know. So it's a true question. I'm really is about the training data. So, is the training data going to be trustable, safe? My companies have problems because they're using a service that's trained on data that turns out to be stolen, not authorized, or whatever. Or is it that a concern that doesn't really exist?
No, it's a concern that absolutely exists. And that's one of the initial knocks on AI in and of itself, right? Is what's in there? What
Yeah.
constitutes the data behind the information you're getting, right? We all know, I think I may have used the Disney example before. They're one of the most litigious companies on earth. All it takes is a Mickey Mouse coming out of a set you might build in Mid Journey or Stable Diffusion, and if you try and resell that or whatever that is, circles all the way back around. But even at a more fundamental enterprise level, is standard data practices and apply. And of course, we always need to be aware of bias in data. We need to be aware of what goes into the hopper. And there should be a cleanup and there should be an oversight committee, again, made up of a strata of employees throughout the business, a real diversification of people, not just your C levels, not just your executives, people who work in the day to day, right? And you move that in. And for enterprises specifically, you can take advantage of products like Azure OpenAI, where you have control of your data, you're siloed out more, or you build in-house systems, maybe on NVIDIA DGXs, where you bring your own data in and work the models, right? That's the safest play. And in my estimation, that's the right play. But that's the problem with public versus private AI implementations,
Yeah.
right? Public, you don't know what's under the hood. And as an enterprise, right, you need to be cognizant of one, your employees using it because now they're putting data in and getting stuff out, right? So other people put prompts in and get stuff out. So there can be linkage. That's the public side. You don't know what's in and you're putting stuff in and you don't know who's going to get it out.
Yeah.
Private side, enterprise side, you're in control. You know what's going in, you know what's going out, you know who uses it, and you can put in ethical standards into your data oversight to make sure, to ensure you have proper output and it can withstand challenges, right, from other data scientists or other platforms. So that's the big one right there is public versus private. And I would encourage enterprises, one, to move into enterprise grade as quickly as possible, whether it's a small implementation in-house in their own private cloud or in a public cloud, but their own implementation to begin letting their employees kind of familiarize themselves and start building their ethical frameworks around it to get their feet wet outside of letting everybody just play in public playgrounds because that can have adverse effects, and unknown adverse effects really at this point in time.
So yeah, are the effects actually unknown at this point? I feels like it. Like we don't really know what's happening when you heavily use Chat GPT, for example, to name the poster child for all the things. Is your
You
data going back to OpenAI? It is, I think.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely is. It's on their disclaimers. Uh,
Hmm.
they use it for training. It's right there. It goes into their hopper. They're working on new models. They're using that to train. Now, here's an interesting question. We all know the gig industry. If you're using it consistently with your data, your ideas into the hopper, and remember, OpenAI is going private. They were pseudo private since 2019, I believe. So we can check that. Now, do you get any kind of recompense back as a user? So it's $20 subscription a month for like their product, OpenAI, I'm talking about specifically. But your data is being used to train and augment what everybody else is using.
Yeah, in fact, you don't not only not get anything back, but in reality, you're training the system to replace yourself.
Yeah. Just let that sink in for a minute. Maybe that model should be a one, value for value model. You pay what you get out of it. And two, per use, the more you use it, a larger discount goes back to the user. So there's some type of balance, or you just go to a straight not for profit model purely, right? But that's something no one takes into account. I don't hear anybody talking about is humans on open platforms, public platforms, are actively training these models, right? Day in and day out. That's why they're out there. We're not getting anything back for it. I don't know if I like that. So then I encourage everybody to go to Git or wherever and find smaller models that you can personalize and make private. So, under the umbrella of ethics, there's a thing that we, humanity, are putting out to these public clouds, and we don't get anything out of it per se. So maybe we should build our own little private clouds, or for enterprises, use things much more secure, right? Again, like an Azure OpenAI implementation, that way we can avoid a number of these concerns. Right. But yeah, I think it's hilarious. We're all out here training models, doing the work. There's hundreds of thousands of us on the daily. You just go to, Discord and look and open AI or Mid Journey or Stable Diffusion's
Yeah.
posts. We're all in there working. Maybe just drop that $20 subscription fee a little bit, guys. Let's make it a $5.
Yeah, the other thing is access. It's still not super easy to run your own model. So, but that's not even an ethics question, just a technical question. Like it will come. There will be a stable diffusion model where moment when there's just something you can run. There's probably a couple. Like you probably run Vicuña right now, pretty easily.
Well, it's funny, and I might disagree a little bit in pool access
Hmm.
under ethics because listen,
Hmm.
accessibility. I come originally from West Virginia, Appalachia. It's one of the poorest places in the country. Not a lot of people out there have one, quality internet access, or two, equipment to take advantage of these technologies, period. Whether it is a personal computer or access to even a public library.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
ethically,
much less GPUs or stuff like that to use to run things.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. So, under the auspices of ethics, companies, right? And maybe non-government organizations or nonprofits should be bound to help these communities move into technology and not be left behind. If anybody remembers when we started moving to more green technologies, there was the phrase learn to code, right? Coal miners learn to code. That you still don't have the underpinnings of technology there to even make that happen. So there's a fundamental ethical responsibility that if technology is going up and people like myself or yourself have the advantage, we should be working to bring everybody up. And large companies have the horsepower to do it.
Yeah, much like the in some countries and probably the US too, there was a push a few years ago at this point to get broadband to everybody. Broadband eventually came to everybody by virtue of the market because honestly, cable runs on broadband now, so they need to run the lines through your house so they can sell you things. But I think the next thing is going to be making sure everybody has access to the various AI stack components because frankly, I don't think this is a metaverse. Like that's the underlying question that one of my hobbies, if you want to call it that, is investing a little and picking stocks and working through things too. I end up always buying ETFs because it's easier and safer. But and is this a real turning point, or is this the metaverse and 3D televisions? I feel like we're getting to the point.
Oh, you got me on the 3D TV. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That was
3D TVs were everywhere for like a year. You could not buy a television that was not 3D. Then boom, they just went away because people don't want them. Essentially, it's just. I don't think AI. I think we're to the point where AI is a real tool that's going to fundamentally change the fabric of possibly the world.
I absolutely agree. Now, in the pantheon of great technologies, the airplane, space shuttle, the telephone, telegraph, I think the cell phone might be number 3 all time. Like fire is probably number 1, then I'm gonna go
Yeah.
electricity, and then I'll go cell phones, right? I'm gonna stand by that statement. I don't think AI in and of itself breaks the top 5 of game changers.
So you also, I like mentioning the steam engine, which is
Ah,
essentially the beginning of an entire era. And probably, well, you got it. There's the computer itself, probably
yeah,
number 4 or 5, somewhere there. But you're right, it's probably not. So it's not on the level of inventing a computer.
but it is here to stay. It's not a laser disc. It's not 3D TVs. It has
Full
become
laser disc.
pervasive. It's become pervasive, and here's the why. And it's back to accessibility. I spend a lot of time on these places on Discord, right? You can find me on OpenAI's Discord and Midjourney's Discord a lot. I'm there all the time. And you see a strata of creatives from ages 80 to 8 working in there. It's a ubiquitous technology, and people are able to personalize it. If you remember when cell phones first came out, like a couple years later, you had to buy them, but you could do your ringtones, your wallpaper, and that's really, in my opinion, part of the major thing that helped it take off. Just like America's love of cars, right? You personalize it. This is a technology that is infinitesimally, as I butcher that word, personalizable. As I butcher another word, like 3 words in a row, just mutilated. But that's what it is. That's the attraction of it. So everybody can use it no matter your skill set. Prompt engineering is just the English language or whatever your dominant language is, whatever your mother tongue is. It's the hot new programming language out there, right? So it's accessible to everybody. That's why it will stay. That's why it's not going anywhere. And the technology's sound and it's ubiquitous and it's been around forever, believe it or not, right? So it's here to stay, and it's mainly because of everybody can use it. Now we just need to make sure that everybody has hardware or access in their hand to go take advantage of it.
Yeah, and topic there becomes not only again, I wouldn't say it's a worry, but what I keep thinking about is the infrastructure cost. Like for the first time, probably well, it's not probably not the first time. Many people will tell me and comment saying, "Hey, not the first time this happens." It looks like it's the first time you don't just need a computer. You need a little bit more than just any computer to run it. Well, when Linux started, you could run it on whatever you had on hand. It will be slower, will be faster, it will work. Running an LLM yourself does require expenses that can be substantial, like even training Vicuña just so you have it available on a normal instance is going to run you about $400 at current rates, which is not something everybody has.
No, not at all. And it, you hit again something somewhat personal to me because I'm historically an Apple guy. Love Apple. My apples are M1 silicon or M2 silicon. Good running any NVIDIA Riva or Omniverse. I go through so many hoops, right? And I'm just technology constrained. I'm not cost constrained, but to your point, there are large swaths of the populace that are going to be cost constrained on that. And there'll be a delta where the processing and the hardware meet, and then it becomes inexpensive again. But right now, we're topped out on hardware. Right?
Yeah.
We're not moving the needle that unless there's a breakthrough in the near future I'm not aware of. I think the next holy grail is quantum computing, getting that down. But outside of that, we're hardware constrained, which puts it in public clouds to make it inexpensive. So last time we talked, I think I shared out a couple of gets where there is folks out there working to make these things more accessible and more inexpensive. But I wholeheartedly agree. We have to be cost cognizant and to tie it all the way back. If we are training these things on public infrastructure, there should be a trade off there. Again, I understand it takes energy to run these systems. I use it more than anybody else. I use it 50% more than anybody else. $20 a month, 50% off, right? Find the balance. That would help. And then you can say, hey, my income's X. And then maybe you don't pay anything because the exposure and however that works out with a larger society, whatever subsidies are in place to facilitate that. Not really what I'm going to talk about, but it's something that should be looked at to make these things accessible. Again, I grew up with not a great deal in a place of people that didn't have a great deal of anything. So this is super important to me because we don't want to abandon a whole populace or a whole generation of people based on lack of access or lack of funds.
So here's the other half of the ethics question, the elephant in the room, jobs. So now we're given access to people to all these tools, etc. Some jobs are going to fundamentally change. And just yesterday, I was playing with something. It's a project called Small AI that gives you your own small SMOL, just to small developer in your pocket. You can describe an application to this sort of some superset of GPT effectively. It's an API-based thing, and you can describe an application and it will create the application for you. So this is not only a block of code where you're asking it to give you permutations of all the letters in a string because you don't want to write it yourself, which I mean, I've been doing that for a long time now. But it's actually generating an entire app. And I tried it and I managed to get it to the point where I had the Rails application you could log into, and which had a page that just stated you're logged in, and it works. And I didn't have to do anything other than explain it to this tool. So
I'm gonna flip the paradigm on you. Why is this a job replacement? Why isn't it a job work beside? Why don't you and your personalized assistant work together to accomplish the job? And instead of working 40 hours a week, you work 30 hours a week. You work 25 hours a week. And we can have the discussion about salary and pay and all of that and what that means. But what does it really mean? One, you don't get replaced because you have a assistant. You have an
yeah,
employee that you have designed and helped build to do your job better. Now, with that free time, you have a greater quality of life. You have more free time to further your career, your education if you choose, work with your family. That's the point of all this. People are talking about this great replacement, right? What if it's just a great opportunity? What if we embrace it that way? What if we just get rid of that negative talking point and be like, look, it's not we're going to displace this workforce. We're going to improve everybody's quality of life. 40-hour work week, no more. Everybody's working 30 hours because we have these smart assistants. And because this is the way society's now structured, guess what? Pay stays the same. Right. And I'm painting in the broadest of strokes and Star Trek utopia over here. But that's how I feel we should be looking at it. And that's why we can't leave anybody behind. But that's the paradigm I would ask people to begin embracing, right? There's nothing going to replace human creativity or human drive or any of our emotions, right? So these things will not replace us, at least not in any meaningful way. And by meaningful, I mean actually replacing us in our lifetimes, probably not in the
yeah.
next lifetime.
And you know
But
what's another thing that looks like? Sorry.
yeah,
Well, another thing that looks like it's not going to be replaceable in the short term. I have a friend who's part of a working group at the university in Italy. They're part of the legal tech team, and they're trying to get any LLM to give authoritative, correct responses to legal questions. That happens to be super difficult because LLMs cannot figure out if something is actually correct yet. It's getting better, but it's a long way to go. As in, if you ask them, for example, they work on jobs, so their job laws, so their questions are like, can I fire an employee who's been at my company more than 5 years if without giving them any notice if they have stolen a computer from their office, which is something that could come up, right?
mhm.
And the LLMs will make up a response if they don't know, including completely making up low names and low numbers. Like, yeah, according to law number 5 of July 14th, 2020, you can fire this guy, but that actually completely made up. I'm not even sure that that's fixable, considering that LLMs are simply statistical models that put words after one after the other.
And that's all they are. I'm so glad you brought it up. They are statistical models that say, hey, you gave me these in a string, and I think
Yeah,
and probabilities that I'm going to return these. This is how we're working. And I said I there like it's a thing. It is not. It's an it, right? It's a bit of software. So that goes. That's why I say it won't replace. You've seen studies where it's passed the American Bar Association, but is it going to
yeah,
get up there and drop Johnny Cochran if the glove doesn't fit? You must acquit. No, because it's not human. It's not clever, right? It's not really creative in and of itself because it's a statistical model that says these things should come next.
yeah. It is. The example I always make is if I say my favorite ice cream flavor is, the probability that the following word is, I don't know, vanilla or chocolate is far higher than, I don't know, car or piano, because there's literally no way my favorite ice cream flavor is car. So it is. It's very. It is what it is. It's plus brings up. This probably ties to ethics too. Like, use that for generating fiction. Is it ever going to do something that's truly new? This is probably philosophy even more. Like, is it something that's like, if I ask an LLM for a story about the topic I really like reading sci-fi. So maybe I will ask about a short story about an idea that I have and I haven't read yet. And will it be a truly new story, or in the end, is it just made up of parts that came up from other? It's very hard to figure out.
You just came up with the story, and then you're using your writing assistant to help you begin flushing out the ideas. Again, it's not coming up with anything, but you just did.
You're right. So there's no way you can just ask it for one story, or rather, if you do, they'll generate very poor quality. Like you can literally just say, "Tell me a story," but it's never. It's usually it's just a fable or something like that.
Yeah, and I could probably sit here with a straight face and say, I believe that 30% of the time, if you just say, tell me a story, if once upon a time, because most stories that are probably in the model start with once, whatever that weight is of that language, that's what you're going to get back. But but back to what you're saying, you began writing, and then you have a writing assistant, and then your Great American Novels finished in a few weeks earlier, and then you're off to the races, right? But make sure you use a private model with a data set that you have put in there and created yourself,
Yeah,
or your
Gr.
work could be invalid.
George Martin. Someone should email George Martin at this point. Like, hey, can you just finish those books, please?
Has
That
anybody
will be
thought of that
amazing.
yet? Just creating that model, taking all of his work, all of his books in an isolated environment, and just be like, finish this story. Now, here's the
Well,
philosophical question: if George R. R. Martin uploads all of his work into a private model and then works the model to write the next book, we gonna give him flack for it? I wouldn't. I'd be like, no, that's he built the model. That's all his work, and he's writing with it. That's his writing
I mean, is
assistant.
it
Way to
really
go.
different from using Microsoft Word and the auto correction and some auto completion and stuff like that? It's probably not very much
To
different.
me,
Like it's
yeah, to me
tools.
it isn't. It's if I had a writing idea and I started bouncing it off view, right? So we're having a repertoire of this idea. Same thing. Same thing. That's how I see it. That's again why I say they're work beside, not replacement. Now, sure, smart kiosks or things of that nature are going to happen. Robotics is going to happen. But for the width and breadth of things, I think we can really just change the paradigm. Their work beside, as humanity, we're going to do better and have more free time, which is the goal to to be human and have our pursuits instead of just a pure replacement, right? Always work beside, not replace the work.
Yeah, the discussion about generating free time through technology is as old as the world, but people don't realize that a 12-hour work day used to be the norm. And even those memes you see cycling around that say that peasants back in the medieval times will, I don't know, work 3 days a week, etc. Don't remember those other 4 weeks were spent trying not to die of hunger or or cholera or whatever, and they were not really going to the beach like this. There's this misconception where people will work 3 days in the fields and then spend the other four painting and hunting and going down to the beach, etc. Most cases, again, those 4 days were spent trying not to die, which is not ideal. The work day has been reduced in length, granted not everywhere, and granted, not every employer is great in the world. Like I'm very far from defending some practices that are
You know,
widespread and
I'm
not
going to take
great.
that
But
talking point. I love that talking point. They were just trying not to die. But and I stepped on you a bit there because I wholeheartedly agree, right? We finally hit a break in time where we could use technology to free ourselves up from not dying all the time. We don't have to farm and then go hunt and then go gather or toil, right? In some
yeah,
type of serfdom. We can actually be free a bit. But all the way back, we need to make sure that the public at large has controls over both governmental and private institutions to make sure that their data isn't being abused or the tools aren't being implemented in such a fashion to erroneously categorize groups of people, right? I danced around a couple things there, but you see where I'm going, right? It all begins with public oversight. And I would implore organizations, governmental and private, to create open boards or open governance where they invite the public in or have a member to of the public to be part of their oversight committee for these items, right? And I kind of just went off track, but I wanted to make sure I got that out.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be something that we've historically not done well as as humanity, but maybe it's gonna. We tend to chase things after they've escaped. Let's see if we can get it a little bit better right now. I feel like the main problem here, at least from my point of view, which of course limited, in Italy, we have a very real problem with the ruling class, like politicians and in general the public sector is made up of older people who haven't furthered their education after they're done with school or whatever, even university. They haven't done anything in 20, 30 years. So we have an entire swath of society that is in the positions to put controls in, but they don't understand the tools. So they either ban them or don't know they exist. There's no middle ground.
There is no middle ground. I find that very odd. It's the same here in the States, right? When I tune in on occasion to watch Senate hearings or what have you, and listening to people talk about Bitcoin or machine learning or AI, or God forbid, ethics and AI coming from government, it's terrible. And I wholeheartedly agree. And that's why I'm like, yeah, you should have members of the public out there. Just, grab a few people off the street, put them on your oversight board, rotate them out frequently. But that builds trust, and that's what we need. And we could talk about term limits on age, or you get to do 2 or 3. I'm not exactly sure how it works in Italy, but there's remedies for that. But I think involving the public is the quickest and most effective remedy we could have now. But yes, I totally agree. It's painful to hear people talk about
Banning
technology.
everything. Yeah, we need to. I feel like the real danger is that we need to avoid the populist parties and sides jumping on AI too hard, ending up in bans that effectively just sets you back because other countries which have better rules or better people at the helm will not ban, but they will regulate, and as a result, they'll get a lot of. Well, look at there are many things that Italy has done wrong in the energy sector. We banned nuclear power plants a long time ago. So now France, which is right across, like I can see France from my window, right? It's right there because I live very close to the border. And there's a nuclear plant that's far closer to my house than any of the known nuclear plants Italy has. So the net result is just we're spending more on energy while not getting any of the benefits of not having nuclear plants nearby because one is literally there.
Yeah, it's technology should be in the hands of people that utilize the technology and understand it well. And one of the best ways I've kept abreast of technology, Discord, is going where the youth is. I'm an older guy now, but the youth, we'll call them people under the age of 25, have a great grasp on where things are going. I find it hilarious about the nuclear portion. I believe Italy also banned Chat GPT.
Yeah, that was a GDPR related thing too. It wasn't about the
Yes,
technology itself. There were concerns about the not regulating the age of access. So now they have a disclaimer and require you to register if you're using the free version, meaning that technically solves it. That was just a legal thing, not a true technology thing.
got it. So you can use it. If you're paid, you don't have to do anything. And if it's the free version, then you have to have proof of age, right?
Correct. Yes, that's that, and no, that's also why the other APIs, like the API side of things, kept working because for to get to use the API, you have to register, put in a credit card, etc. So that satisfies the GDPR requirements. For once, it wasn't about technology. Although I always feel like the underlying tone when it's about Italy, it's someone in the high chairs said, well, GPT is going to kill our jobs, so why don't we ban everything, and blah, blah, blah. And then it was a gesture. Again, it was just a gesture. We're not powerful enough for people to actually care. So GPT just said, well, OpenAI just said, well, you know what, we're just going to ban it, and we're just going to close access until we figure it out. No worries. It's not going, those few thousand $20 subscriptions, whatever, we just made a few billion selling API access to whatever Department of Defense office. So it's
That's hilarious. And Montana here in the States was the first US state to ban TikTok. Now, I haven't read their legalese, exactly what's happened there. Yeah, but they full banned it. I have no clue how that would work.
Yeah, that's the other question. Like, how do you do it? Are you gonna come to my house and screenshot my screen to see what I'm doing? I don't even know.
Yeah, I'm a big believer of the free and open internet. I do not like agencies taking away my ability to communicate. I'm a very firm believer in that, especially as a US citizen. So that always doesn't sit well with me when things are revoked. I have enough faith, oddly enough, in society that we will, given the opportunity, we would right the ship accordingly in and of ourselves. I don't think we're that bad.
Yeah, the very reason around well, this podcast itself is open source. So we started with open source, and I feel like that open source was so instrumental in the growth of IT that in open source LLM models are going to be instrumental too. There's already a few that works quite well. There's a few you can train with like $40. I think the next revolution is going to be able to distribute standardized pre-trained models, which are just large, but this space has never been a problem. And with the various techniques to use less sources, etc., we're not very far from being able to run your own. Maybe it's not as powerful as GPT-4, but being able to run your own is going to be the next instrumental thing. So open source, open access, open everything is how you fix things. Security has never worked. Like, look at, for example, I think most drugs are prohibited in most countries, and yet,
and yet, this is what I'm waiting for. Once models become extensible to mobile devices, whether they become more efficient or the hardware accelerates, that's when we're going to see a jump. I'm really waiting. I've always, again, I've probably said it before, wondered what future we're going to end up in. Is it going to be a Star Trek utopia? Are we going to hit Mad Max through some apocalypse? I'm really feeling Blade Runner right now.
Yeah.
I think that's where we're headed.
Blade Runner is also the least impactful and the more probable because it's least different from what is now. The future in our sci-fi writers' minds has always been way more exciting than it turned out to be. Like, go check out novels from the 60s that were talking about the 2020s.
Oh, Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Yeah, where's my flying car, guys? We don't have any of that.
One of my favorite. I think this might actually be the future. There's Johnny Mnemonic, if anybody remembers, with the illustrious Ice-T.
I'm a big cyberpunk fan in general. Like, it's my favorite sci-fi genre. And
mine too.
I know the movie very, very well. There's I feel like this is so, like, the personal assistant concept with an LLM is strikingly similar to some of the parallel mind thinking that you can see, like being able to ship off a task to something while you're working on something more creative. We're going to get there. And that's also the more probable, just because it's the least, again, it doesn't change much. It doesn't require fundamental switches. Like Star Trek requires too much technology to ever happen. We don't have those engines. We don't have those tools. We'll never have them because FTL travel has been proven impossible. So,
and that total agreement. I think not too far in the future. We'll say 200 years, not too far in the future. 4 generations. I think that's 4 generations. I really see a movement towards transhumanism where we begin to do things such as you said, where we have built the capability in and of ourselves through biotechnology to automate tasks out of in and of ourselves. Like, I got to do these 3 things, move it over here, process it, or take in new data, or really even augment our physical capabilities, right? So that's my long tail where I hopefully see all of this at. And again, hopefully that humanity wins out. I think there's enough good people in the world to win the
Yeah,
day.
I'm honestly not worried. Like this, there usually shouldn't be short of someone really going literally nuclear on on things, and even then, I'm not even sure that will be enough. So people generally just want to carry on with their own
Yeah,
stuff.
all I want to do is live my life, do my own thing, work on my computer, play video games, and not expire in some horrendous fashion. So
That's
hopefully,
totally perfect. I think everybody in the audience will subscribe to that. I would just like to do my thing and possibly not explode in a fireball. So yeah, please let's not do that. Right? It's
yeah. So
we're
world
so
leaders, if you're listening to this podcast, please let's take it down a notch.
avoid liquid fine, guys. Please, we're good. We're good in a solid state for now. We're
Yes.
fine with the current state we're in. Cool. Well, Shawn, thank you so much as usual. It was great chat, and we could keep going on. So maybe we'll do another segment in a month or two. What do you think? Maybe we can do
Oh,
something practical next time, like show people what can
absolutely.
be done at the highest level of LLM usage. Because everybody right now is just asking GPT for fanfic or their favorite characters for the most part. So showing what can be done will be a really, really good next point with the thing.
Oh, I would absolutely love to do that. It'd be my pleasure.
Cool. So, well, let's schedule that. And for now, well, Shawn Augustine joined us. Great, freelance consultant, expert in AI, expert in LLM, expert in all things ethics and around technology. Thank you for joining us today, and Shawn. It was a true pleasure for me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the glowing review. I appreciate it.
And well, for the rest of the people, I'll see you next week. Goodbye.